Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. I'm here with Secretary of Housing, Deborah Goddard, and to talk about a plan, a state plan that has been in the works, and we're very pleased that we're settling here right now in terms of strategy. Everyone knows, I believe, that we have a Rhode Island 2030 plan. Just very quickly, it has to do with raising education outcomes, raising incomes, personal wealth through home ownership, and also making sure that we're healthy and well, and then building out our infrastructure to meet the needs of our families in the state. So we're going to talk about housing and today. So I think one of the common denominators that we have is that we really want our kids, our grandkids, and all our families to be able to have the same opportunities that we have had to own a home and build generational wealth. And we need to create pathways to make that happen. But when housing production does not meet demand, and it has not met demand for some time, it puts a roadblock in what we call the road to prosperity. That needs to change. And we've taken many steps already to move that roadblock. We have built a new state department devoted to this issue. We've obligated more than $200 million in state fiscal recovery funds to expand and preserve housing capacity in Rhode Island. With the public support, we've passed a $120 million housing bond that includes $80 million for affordable housing and $20 million on home ownership. And today, we are unveiling a strategic housing plan that sets a goal of permitting 15,000 new housing units by 2030. Our Housing Secretary, Deborah Goddard, and her team has created a powerful document that makes the case for why we need to act now, what barriers we need to overcome, how the state itself needs to collaborate with cities and towns to get the job done right, and how everyone needs to be part of the solution. The Secretary is going to walk you through the plan at a high level and let you know how you can provide your feedback. And I also want to just mention, which the Secretary will, that our cities and towns play a significant role in this plan. And we will gain a great deal of progress as we get municipal leadership more and more informed about what we're looking to do, and we're committed to do exactly that. Before I turn it over to Deborah, I want to talk about another barrier to success that is not highlighted in the Housing 2030 report. And that's the current governance structure for making housing decisions in Rhode Island. And we've made a great deal of progress since we've established this office, but there's more to do. There are many dedicated partners in our state working to improve the housing situation, and that's a good thing. How they are organized to make decisions, however, is not optimal. With multiple entities developing strategy and policy, but without clear lines of authority. Everybody on the team needs to know what position they play and execute on that mission, rather than having duplicate efforts. That is why, in a recent governance report, the state is recommending that the Department of Housing evolve into the Executive Office of Housing, with consolidated authority to lead on housing policy and planning and coordinating financing to achieve strategic goals. And that is why I just submitted a budget amendment to make these changes and streamline operations. And we're looking forward to working with our leadership in the House and in the Senate to make that happen. Senator, thank you for being here today. There are already too many barriers to growing housing production in Rhode Island. And I know that, again, both leadership in the House and the Senate has been working diligently to address those issues and working with our office to make those things happen. How we organize ourselves should not be one of them. The barriers to growing housing production in Rhode Island. Now, for an overview of the Housing 2030 plan, I invite Deborah Goddard to the podium, and as she approaches it, I want to thank her and her team for the work that has been going on. Not only before you were secretary, but you picking up the ball and actually putting it together. Kate's really been helping out as well, and your team has been doing the work that we need. And today, we stand ready to listen to a plan that is going to really pay dividends for the state of Rhode Island. Secretary?
Good afternoon, and I just want to echo what the governor said. I feel very fortunate to have virtually inherited this plan, a whole lot of work done before I got here to help finalize it. And so I would be remiss if I did not thank the team that we worked with to put this together. Apt Global, Housing Works, Root Policy, League of Cities and Towns, and of course staff at the department. Emily Marshall, Nick Freeman, Josh Berry, and very significantly sitting in the back there, Patrick Duffy. So, Housing 2030, its vision, very, very straightforward. Produce and preserve housing that responds to the needs of all Rhode Islanders, regardless of where they live, what their income is, what their other obstacles are facing them, to create strong communities with a diversity of housing options that are affordable and accessible. It's been a hefty process. I miscued her. It's been a hefty process of consultation. We have an advisory committee who I also need to thank. We did policy research, interviews, stakeholder meetings, resident survey from which we got 1,800 responses. So a very robust process in terms of getting input to put this together. Okay. And what did we hear? Won't be surprising to any of you, but over and over again we heard, my kids, my grandkids can't live here in Rhode Island, they can't afford it. We hear from employers that they're struggling to recruit and retain workers because the workers don't have housing. And we've got some significant job growth potential here in Portsmouth, in Kingstown, North Kingstown. We don't want to stump that because folks can't find affordable housing. Seniors, they have a 4-bedroom house, they want to downsize. There's not stock for them to move into the 1 or 2 bedroom that they would like to live in, freeing up that 3 or 4 bedroom that they don't need anymore. And very, very clearly, a lack of affordable housing is driving our homelessness crisis. It is very well documented that the single most significant factor leading to homelessness is the unaffordability of housing. How did we get here? Some of this is not new. It's several factors. First being, we have not built enough. Simple as that. We have had an uptick with the investments that the governor's made in the last few years. We're getting back to pre-recession production, but we have a long way to go to meet our need. We're moving in the right direction. We need to do more. So, in response, as the governor mentioned, our goal is 15,000 units by 2030. This is not quite doubling what we've done in the 5 years of 2019 to 2023 for which we have the data. It's a stretch, but we really feel it's doable given the trajectory we're on. But more than just 15,000 units. Within that, we want to permit triple ADUs. We want to create 1,000 low-cost home ownership units. We want to serve the spectrum of affordability. I'll say it over and over again. So we need to make sure we're building home ownership for those entering the market, as well as those who are able to procure in the market but can't find a house. And we want to increase what we call middle market units by 50%. These are the 2 families, the 3 families, the townhouses, the 2s and 3s that you used to see, or you still see across the state, but in many places we cannot build them anymore because of zoning obstacles. We want to finance, in addition to what gets permitted, over 2,000 units of affordable rental housing. We want to address the need for extremely low-income households, as well as the need for permanent supportive housing in the span. Again, reaching everyone from top to bottom in what we produce. And we want to preserve. Obviously, we don't want to take 2 steps back by losing housing if you're trying to take a step forward in production. And then, of course, we're going to move all of this towards the 2030 goals of the governor. I've said this, you're going to get sick of me hearing it, saying it, but it's true. Housing is the foundation for good outcomes in health, for good outcomes in education, and for increasing the economic well-being of all of our households as well as our state. What's standing in the way of building more? Well, the second issue that you're well aware of is we don't allow the homes to be built that we need. Going back to those 2s and 3s, they're just not being built these days. A couple of stats here, 87% of Rhode Island is zoned for single family by right. That's the only thing you can build if you own a piece of land without getting some sort of permitting exclusion, exemption from your zoning board or your planning board. Only 20% of our land in Rhode Island allows you to build a 2-family by right without going for permission. Again, this is a classic housing style that we see all over the place and used to build all over the place. And we've zoned it out of existence for new creation. We've got to address this or we won't get to where we need to be. And we won't serve the people we need to serve. Another cause, third cause, effects of rising development costs. This is Econ 101, right? Our cost of construction is increasing significantly, 40% since 2020. Land value, 81% up between 2012 and 2022, 10 years. Obviously, with that pressure on pricing and construction, our costs, our rents, and our price of homes are going up. The stat here tells a big story, number 5. The cost of the number of newly developed homes with a sales price under $400K has fallen by 47% since 2022. So we are pegging some of our work to be producing those houses at $400,000 or below, which a moderate income family can afford. Likewise, rents have increased by 60%. So again, going back to what's creating some of the squeeze and some of the issues we're facing across our state. So our strategies are very straightforward. We're going to set municipal goals for every community, both production goals and low and moderate income housing goals, and we're going to reward progress. If you're taking the actions to open your community up for development in a way that will get you to your goals, maybe you have preferences and discretionary funding you want. We want to take a carrot approach. Second, address zoning and regulatory barriers. Clearly, this has to happen at the local level for the most part. We want to be working with our communities in terms of technical assistance, visualization, AE services, to help communities understand what some of the zoning changes would allow, and what they won't allow in terms of their fear of what housing and affordable housing can bring to their community. 3, strategic investments. With all of our partners, but particularly with Rhode Island Housing, we want to work in collaboration to use that bond money, that $120 million that the voters of Rhode Island gave us. We don't want to stand still, but we want to be strategic. We want to balance those 2 requirements. 4, build and sustain key partnerships. We know we can't do this alone. We need collaboration, as the governor said, with our municipalities, but with our development community, for-profit and nonprofit, with our providers, other state agencies. I said Rhode Island Housing, but DEM, DBR, it's the laundry list. We need all to be working together, pulling in the same direction. Employers, very key. Faith community, we want to have a very broad, inclusive voice for delivering on this package. And then 5, support home ownership and housing stability, again, across that spectrum. So, municipal production goals, excuse me. I want to emphasize a couple of things. We have not taken a one-size-fits-all approach, and we are not doing anything to change the 10% low mod housing act law. What we are doing is setting overall production goals for every community, and within that, a low mod goal. So, let me just get into the weeds a little bit. If you are at your 10% under the low mod housing act, we just want you to stay there, and we're going to set your goal for low mod at a continued 10% so you don't fall behind. If you haven't met your 10%, we want to nudge you a little bit. And we're going to ask you to achieve this at a 15% goal annually to create new low mod housing, inch you towards meeting that 10% overall goal of the state statute. And if you're interested, go to page 33 of the plan, and you'll see the municipal goals for every community. I want to stress too that it's been a very collaborative process. The team, before I got there, met with every community one-on-one to talk about the plan, their issues, what's going on. And after we set the goals, myself and my team offered to meet with every community. We met with 26 communities individually, I believe, took us up on our invitation to talk about what their goals were. And so many communities have development in the pipeline that, by and large, communities are receptive. Some know they have to stretch. Those that we talked with were quite receptive. You know, a few hiccups, but that's to be expected. So, how did we get to this? We looked at 2 factors. Are you a job-rich community? Do you have jobs over the median for other communities? And are you well served by public transit? If you've got both jobs and public transit, we put you in the dark blue, the strategic growth category. If you have the jobs but not the transit, we put you in the lighter blue, moderate growth. And if you don't have either, we put you in the continued growth, acknowledging that you are less ready, less able to absorb housing at this moment. I want to stress one thing, these goals are rather moderate. They're not at any place exceeding even up to 1% increase in growth. So we really think these are doable, and the map showing these categories probably doesn't surprise you. So this will be going out for public comment today. 30 days. Submit your comments to our smart link on our website, www.housing.ri.gov, and we will finalize the plan, hopefully publish it in the fall after we receive your comments and take them into account. So thank you.
Before we do questions, we are very lucky to have Senator Sarah just there.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity for the administration to speak on, not only on, as the chair of the Senate Committee on Housing and Municipal Government, but also on behalf of the Senate. And it's obviously been a difficult week for us, and one of the few times, maybe the last time I can say, on behalf of the Senate President, my dear friend, Dominic Ruggiero. And I will say the Senate President would be ecstatic to see this, because one of the things he always felt that Rhode Island could do a better job at is planning. And so he would be thrilled to see that we have finally, and I think a very public way, a statewide plan on housing. And while the Secretary talked about modest growth numbers there, I think when you take a step back and actually look at this plan and what it's calling for, 15,000 units over roughly, let's say, the next 5 years, that it's a very bold plan. Right now we're averaging, when we look over the last couple of years, which puts us last in the country, I would say approximately 1,500 units per year. And, well, 15,000 divided by 3, I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, but 15,000 divided by 5, that gives you about 3,000 units per year. So looking at trying to double that goal. And so I think that's an aggressive goal. And if I could, just indulge me for 1 second, just talk about my dear friend, the Senate President. Not only would he love the idea of a strategic plan and how to get there and how to solicit input, and the kind of scalpel approach that this takes, multifaceted approach. One of the pieces of legislation he was most proud of was a development-oriented piece of legislation, and that was relative, it's been reported over the last couple of days, but the 195 District Commission, once the bridge is removed and all that. And, so that was a cornerstone piece of legislation that he worked on with his legal counsel at the time, Lisa Cloutier, and also his chief of staff, Stephen Iannazzi. And he was so proud of it. And one of the things that he was most proud of was that it was taking a pro-development approach along with the first chair there at the time, Colin King. And, but one of the most frustrating things that he encountered during his tenure as Senate President also occurred on that property. And that was, what we would not affectionately, but we would talk about as NIMBYism, right? And if there was one term that he came to hate over the course of a couple of years as it related to 195, it was the term sightlines. And he couldn't believe that folks in adjacent communities in the city of Providence would want to stymie development that was so necessary over something like sightlines and that NIMBYism approach. And if I could, just for a minute, it was obviously critical as we sat there and we talked about how to spend ARPA funds. Nearly a third of those ARPA funds went towards dealing with Rhode Island's housing crisis. But it is critically important that we get back to our pre-Great Recession numbers, as the Secretary alluded to. Approximately 2,200 units per year. We have not eclipsed that. And so I always like when I talk about the housing crisis, which I see, I represent Senate District 1, which is here, all the way up to North Providence. I see all facets of it. I see facets perpetuated by the student housing market. I see facets perpetuated by individuals who want to downsize and are house rich but cash poor and can't downsize because there's no affordable options. But I often talk about it within the idea of three numbers, right? That unfortunately, because of the economics that the Secretary talked about, more than 2,000 individuals will experience homelessness in the state of Rhode Island this year. We need more than 20,000 units of affordable housing, not just housing affordability, but affordable housing, truly deed-restricted affordable housing in the state. And more than 150,000 households in the state of Rhode Island are housing cost burden. There was not a single community where a household making $100,000 could purchase a home last year. And a number of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, right before the break, the Senate Committee on Housing and Municipal Government heard from the Pew Center on Research that was in town for the Lieutenant Governors Association. And their research into Rhode Island, why the housing crisis has gotten so bad in Rhode Island, was eye-opening. And it's not just economics 101, I'd argue that it's economics 100, which is that since 2017, housing inventory in the state of Rhode Island has decreased 78%. As a result, our rents have increased in that same time frame to 57%. What that meant in numbers, ballpark, off the top of my head, average rent in 2017 was $900. Now you're looking at $1,500. The Secretary is absolutely correct that those increases in rents are what are driving the increase in our neighbors that are experiencing homelessness. So this plan, the cornerstone of this plan, which is a bold plan to really double our production over the next 5 years and get to 15,000 units by 2030, is absolutely critical because we need units across literally all facets of the spectrum. So I'm grateful to the Secretary for this plan, grateful for the Governor for his 2030 plans, and I would just ask that as we solicit public comment, we be mindful that we need to take a highest and best approach to density across the state, that we need units in order to increase inventory. And so it's that, I think we have about a 30-day public comment period. Certainly folks will want to reach out and they'll want to talk about protecting community character and all of these things, which many times can be just veiled terms for, well, we want to maintain the status quo. And the fundamental fact of the matter is, if we maintain the status quo in the state of Rhode Island, due to things like the natural projection of household size, just to maintain the current status quo in Rhode Island, we should be adding 2,200 units of housing to meet natural population trends. If we do not rise to this occasion, more and more of our neighbors will face homelessness. There will be fewer and fewer options for housing as it relates to our parents, our brothers, our sisters, individuals' children. And so we all have to do our part over this public comment period. I invite people to visit housing.ri.gov to put in their comment, and I would just ask, for policy's sake, for our neighbors' sake, that when you put in those comments, you do it with a pro-development mindset, that you beat back the tide of NIMBYism, and I guess the new term is to become a YIMBY, yes in my backyard, and we welcome everyone. I'm very proud that in my own district, we've always welcomed folks on Smith Hill. It's been the community where those seeking refuge have often come, and we welcome them with open arms in this city. And the latest example of that is our own neighbors with Echo Village, and I'm so proud of that. And I just wish, and I hope, that spirit, and now that there is a crisis, my colleagues in the Senate, throughout government, throughout local government, keep that same open arm approach. So thank you. This is a great plan, and I just encourage everyone to keep that pro-development mindset over the next 30 days during the public comment period. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
That was a resounding endorsement. Before we do Q&A, I just a break.
Yeah, let me just thank the senator for being here, and I'll take a little executive privilege here to say that not only Jake was a senator, but he also was chief of staff of Dominic, and we had multiple meetings, and what he was saying is correct. So we are going to move ahead because of leadership that is now in the hands of the senator, but in the name. Well, you are the chair. No, you won't have to take questions, but I'm just saying you chair a very important board. But we'll definitely do the work. But I just wanted to echo what Jake was saying in terms of the input that Dominic has had on multiple issues. And now you're all set.
I was just going to say, before we start Q&A, I want to make it clear that questions are about housing. If you have questions that are off topic, we'll do that later in the gaggle, okay? So, Alexa.
Can we just have an explanation of how we got to the 15,000 number? Why that over the course of basically 4 years, 2026 to 2030?
So we did look at some of the factors that Jake mentioned. How much housing are we losing? What are we seeing for population growth? And I think that the exact formula is somewhere 13,000 something just for that. But we want to bring down the price a little bit more. So it's a bit of a cushion, but it's also pushing us to get to a better vacancy rate.
And then, can I just take this? The Rhode Island Foundation came out with a report 2 years ago, which was really supposed to be the guiding principle for this 2030 plan. And at that time, the report said that Rhode Island would need about 24,000 units to really close the affordability gap. Is this stopping short? I know it's in a 5-year span, not 10-year span like some other reports that have come out, but is this stopping short? And if so, why did we stop short?
No, I don't think it's stopping short. We really believe, we looked at what it would take to start bending the arc of rent increases, improve the vacancy rate for both homeownership and rental. And this does start bending that back. So I think it's a combination of slightly more than what we need to status quo. It's more than we need. It's more than we need to start bending the arc, lower the pace of increase in rents and homeownership. It's achievable.
Great. Ian.
Senator DeSillian described how efforts to create more housing are often met with concerns about maintaining community character. Is the carrot approach, rewarding progress, going to be sufficient to overcome the opposition that we've seen in some parts of Rhode Island building more housing?
That's where we're going to start. We're going to start with encouragement. We're going to start with the very pesky voice of the Secretary of Housing in their ear a lot. I'm going to have the governor in my ear on that matter, but we can reevaluate that.
Do you think, based on the recent experience where we've seen pushback from some communities, is more of a stick needed than more of a carrot?
I think that one of the key things is what's the carrot. If it's funding that communities want, it's not just housing funding, and you get a preference for that, I think that is a nicely cloaked hammer. But I understand the caution, and we've got to keep our eyes on it. I also think, and apart from the plan or in support of the plan, I want to build a voice around housing that's not just the department, that's employers, that's the faith community, advocates. They all bring a different tenor and tone to that conversation than the state can bring. So this is, we had a campaign for the bond bill. Now we've got to have a campaign to make sure that bond bill gets used in the way we need housing across the state.
Yeah.
How are you working with municipalities or strict zoning laws to be able to get this done?
We actually, the legislature's actually been doing a lot of work on this level, but we also have funded what we call the Municipal Fellows Program out of SFRF funds. So we are funding for up to 2 years, persons working for communities in the planning department. We had heard at a meeting with the League in February of 23 that a lot of communities don't have the staff they need, and they feel overwhelmed when they get proposals coming to them. So this helps them feel like they are equipped to address that, to move forward, to deal with the changes that are coming from the legislature. Rhode Island Housing and the department have been offering technical assistance. That's been very helpful to help them address the zoning changes they need to. We are in the process of putting together a system to identify land that's available, that can be built out, that isn't going to be watered down, so on and so forth, underwater, I should say. And we're creating some visualization tools. I firmly believe that design is a hugely valuable mediator in a lot of these conversations. And so we're going to create a tool to help towns at community meetings talk about what housing can look like, how you can use different massing to disguise the number of units you're putting in. But I think all of that in support of the communities to help them get where they want to get. And a lot of them do.
You had mentioned some incentives that municipalities would get, but would there be any consequences for those who don't meet the state's goals?
Well, that was asked a second ago. We're going to take the carrot approach, but again, as I said, and I really mean this, if someone wants their roads paved, do they get priority if they're not making their community open to housing? So, and again, just look at Massachusetts, right? The town that sued to overcome the MBTA Communities Act was suing because they didn't get money for their seawall. I mean, you gotta, it's a carrot, but it's a nicely, I think, disguised hammer in its own way.
Anybody else? Yeah, Alexa.
It was actually 7 Massachusetts municipalities that have sued the state.
The first one.
Right. So, I mean, is that something that you actually expect? Because encouragement can only go so far. Changes in some state laws can only go so far. And we saw that when there were certain state laws that the speaker encouraged and Narragansett circumvented those laws.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you expect for the future? Do you expect those lawsuits, and kind of what are the ramifications that the state is expecting from that?
I haven't heard any tenor about lawsuits from the municipalities at all. We have one that's the eminent domain case, and we're disappointed in that. But honestly, and the governor has had municipal leader lunches that I've been invited to attend before, maybe we're going to have the last one. And so we've been talking to all the communities about we are going to have these goals. There's some folks that are a little, we've got to worry about our water and so forth, but legitimate. But we haven't heard any outrage or any real adamant, you're crazy.
And I think what's in the pipeline today reflects that, right? There's thousands of units that are in the pipeline since I've been governor. Some of them are been completed, 300 alone in the city of Pawtucket right now, an additional 500 that's going to be built across the river once the soccer stadium is opened up. So, and then as the secretary said, right in this room, I meet with municipal leaders on an annual basis in small groups for lunch. And this series of lunches, I wanted them to meet the secretary, they have. And then I've asked to make sure that before this report became public, that we gave an opportunity to every community in the state to meet with us specifically about their community. That has happened. So my belief is that there's a great deal of interest in addressing this issue. And I believe that the municipal leadership understands that as a value to their community to address it. And as a former mayor, we do what's in the best interest of the community, and this is in the best interest of the community. So I fully expect the cooperation. Some will do more than what is on the plan there. Some will push back against potentially some of the numbers, but I've looked at the numbers. I don't think anyone's unreasonable, and I think the secretary and her team have done a really good job to try to highlight the different ability for communities to absorb, whether it's in that dark blue or the a little lighter shade or in that gray area. So I think that the communication with none of this information is going to catch a community by surprise, and that's what I thought was very important to do, to make sure that they knew and understood what we were trying to get done, and they have already started moving us in that direction.
Governor, a point of clarification too, you just brought up the 500 units that are currently in the works in Pawtucket, for instance. They might come online next year in 2026. Would they contribute to this 15,000 number?
Of course.
Or they would?
Of course, and so the 300 that are in construction right now in the city of Pawtucket, the hundreds of units that are under construction in Providence right now, or East Providence right now, those are all in the pipeline. And as what the notion here is that we want a certificate of occupancy on these properties. So we're not going to count the things that are in the pipeline, although that's going to help us. But everything that's in the pipeline right now, we have, as a result of the $200 million and the federal dollars, as a result of the $120 million, the largest housing bond that's ever been passed in the state of Rhode Island, and a strategy, as the secretary is laying out, we're going to need the cooperation from the municipalities, and I believe that we've paid them the respect that they're going to respect this plan.
And I promise this question, but say we get to 2030 and there are cities, towns that don't actually reach that production goal, what are the ramifications that they could face?
Yeah, so I think that one of them is that we're not going to wait till 2030 to measure. We are going to start measuring on a regular basis, multiple times a year, to make sure that these communities are heading in the right direction. And if they need, in instances where they need a little coaching, we'll provide the coaching. The goal is that every community is going to participate on the level that we've outlined. Some will participate at larger levels. I've already met with municipalities who said, look, we'll take whatever you can give us. And the secretary was saying, and I instructed the secretary as well, the communities that are already got things in the pipeline, already on the drawing board, production that they are encouraging, we are going to prioritize those communities with the funding that we have, which is going to help accelerate.
Thank you all. And,
Thank you.
I just want to point out, I'm sorry, we have one more.
Two more. So in light of the opposition we've had to single stair, as an example, single staircase buildings, it seems like one of the things in there is that the fire code needs to be overhauled, that state code needs to be modified to allow things like triple deckers, which can only have townhomes because it's just not commercially viable. How does that get dealt with?
Well, I think again, as I indicated, it's in collaboration with the House and Senate leadership, which we'll continue to do. And as we identify things that are really, as I've outlined in my comments and the secretary as well, things that are getting in the way, we got to determine that we got to make sure it's safe, but we also got to work our way through any roadblocks that are there that should be addressed.
And then the next thing I had was, I noticed in the report that there's a lot of talk about short-term rentals, but there is absolutely no talk about punishing vacation homeowners or second homeowners who have unoccupied homes. Is there anything being thought about to both quantify and then also to address or to penalize with a higher tax rate second homeowners who aren't doing short-term rentals?
That's a local issue that I respect, and we certainly will work with the local communities. Remember, not every community has got that problem. Right? In fact, the minority of the communities in the state has that problem, which is a problem, and it's specific to that community. So we're in conversations with the communities on that issue, as well with the league, right? The city leagues of cities and towns. With Randy, who's the executive director there. So we will take, we're not going to slow down the process by any specific issues like that, which are important. We're going to make sure that we move ahead in a real deliberate way and a quick way. And where there are barriers, like you mentioned, there's some fire barriers that should be provided relief as long as it's safe. We identify those. We're happy to approach that. Locally, we're going to talk to the communities about that particular issue that you just brought up, which we know where they are, right? It's mostly the seaside communities.
And Kathy, why don't you close us out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. For the secretary, this was asked before, please just let me know. But hiccups. You mentioned you met with, I think, 26 communities about the goals in here for them, and there were some hiccups. Which communities and what were the hiccups?
Honestly, I am not going to remember which communities out of 26, but there's some common things. Concern about water and sewage capacity. Infrastructure was a very common one. And we've asked them to actually get us the estimates of what they need. When we do another bond bill, maybe we need to focus more on infrastructure than other things. That was a very common hiccup. It's not that they were saying we won't. They're saying right now we have problems. So that's something that we want to look at. As well, in the bond bill, there is some money put aside for municipal technical assistance, and I think we're going to target that to communities who need to hire engineering firms to start that kind of design to get them over that hiccup. Another hiccup, well, some were honest. They said, we know we've got folks in our community that are opposed to what we want to do. They aren't going to stop. It's just a reality they know they have to deal with. So I really mean a hiccup, not anything I'm tripping over.
Was one of the 26 the town of Johnston, and what was the reaction there?
No, Johnston was one of 13 that did not take us up on that invitation.
Thank you all very much.
Just ask you, is there any legislation that you'll be putting forth that will incentivize municipalities to complete the housing plan that you have set forth?
I think I think the Secretary mentioned it really well. We're working with each municipality on goals that we've set for them that collectively will get us to a reach that statewide goal. So the communities that are really working with us right now, which I think is most of them, we're going to continue to try to help them reach those goals. And if we find somebody is not doing their part, and we certainly will stop meeting with them and talking about ways that we can help them reach, do their part. Right.
Any communities already that you see might be pushing back on this plan?
No, actually, the communities that we met with were very pleased with the fact that we didn't do a one approach, just everybody treating everybody the same. So I think that they appreciated the fact that we were very mindful of that. Now let's see what happens. We've got the 30-day time frame. Once the plan gets adopted, after the public comments, we're going to get right to work. I think you saw in the Secretary's comments that she's here to help us achieve these goals. And then we're going to continue to work on that. And we also encourage the General Assembly to pass the legislation that has to do with raising dollars on the homeless issue, right? We put in, so we know it's from homelessness all the way to fair market value, and it needs to kind of fit into our 2030 plan. I think the communities are going to see that that's to their advantage to actually help us make that, because if we're able to do that, we're going to do better in our schools, we're going to do better on our economy. There's going to be a healthier state as a result of it, and I think Secretary Goddard said very well that housing is a critical component to those three objectives that we set.
All right, we're very tight on time.